Welcome back to another vendor update here on All Things MSP. Today we have a testimonial featuring Sharon Martin, CEO and founder of Managed Nerds, a cybersecurity-first MSP she founded to, in her words, elevate small businesses above the cybersecurity poverty line. Absolutely love the way you put that. And Managed Nerds is a partner of EasyDMARC, and today we're going to discuss DMARC with Sharon, some of the warning signs with DMARC, and how you should be managing it for your clients. Join me in welcoming Sharon Martin to the program.
Thanks, Eric. It's great to be here.
How are you today?
Pretty good. It's been a busy Wednesday. Every day is busy, but it's a great Wednesday.
Awesome. So one of the things that we talked about ahead of time was that you kind of got into this MSP thing in a little bit different path than most people. So why don't you spend the first couple of minutes telling us about yourself and about how you started Managed Nerds?
Sure thing. Well, if you go longer in the past, I'm actually an Army veteran. I was an Arabic linguist in the Army, deployed to Iraq, got out and realized language was great, but I really wanted to go into my true love, which is technology and cyber. I'm in the Augusta, Georgia area, which is home of Fort Eisenhower. Now, it was formerly Fort Gordon, and it's now the home of U.S. Army Cybercom. So I hopped on that cyber bus, finished off my degrees, worked for Department of the Army as 5.5 years. I was a cyber analyst, and I was also an operator on the offensive cyber operations side of the house. And I loved helping out government, but really my true desire was to help businesses out. And so I worked my way out to private industry. And I landed at a company called Huntress Labs. And at Huntress, I was one of their early product hires. And I eventually became more and more technical and ended up as a product architect. So I helped figure out initially how were we going to do EDR detections when they started working on the Microsoft 365 MDR product. Same dealio. I was helping figure out how are we going to initially detect what compromise is. And, I was on the back end helping send mass incidents whenever a rapid response effort happened. It was a really great time. But Huntress is where I learned about MSPs and small businesses. And the more I learned about MSPs, the more I said, hey, I kind of feel like that's really where my calling is. And that was cemented March of 2023, around that time frame when the city of Augusta was hacked. So we're home of U.S. Army Cybercom, yet our entire city was ransomed and brought down for several weeks. And that made me angry. And so that really kind of pushed me to move. But the other reason I moved over is I saw what I felt was kind of a gap in the market. A lot of MSPs, as they grow, they tend to move up market. And a lot of them will even have minimums where it's, 10 employees and up or a certain minimum spend. And in reality, more than 95% of small businesses have 10 or less employees. And so that's where I saw my calling. That's how I kind of hopped to the MSP land. And so it was December of last year where I hopped away from my full-time job at Huntress and really set out on that journey.
That's awesome. I really like, because I feel kind of the same way you do in terms of a calling towards the smaller MSP, the smaller business, because I always look for underserved markets, right? Not just from a business standpoint, but being a good citizen of the world kind of thing. And I feel like that's kind of the approach that you've taken to this as well.
You're right on the money. And, speaking of money, obviously, this is an area with tight margins, et cetera. And there's a lot of different things you encounter with small businesses, the smallest ones, hence DMARC.
Yeah. And DMARC is important because everybody has email and everybody depends on email being delivered and received. And it's like phones, 10, 20 years ago. You had to make sure that the phone systems were reliable. And now email has kind of taken the place of phones and become that critical. So why is DMARC so important today? And what are some of the things that MSPs need to be aware of that if you don't properly configure DMARC can actually harm your client's business?
Well, let me put on my hacker hat since I've worn one before and say that misconfigured DMARC or unconfigured DMARC does leave the business open to phishing, and not just phishing internal employees, but also using anybody could use your business email domain to send emails to another business. Maybe one of your clients pretend to be you and phish them because you have essentially left that domain unsecured, able to send emails. And that's why Google, Microsoft, Yahoo, they all got together. And this was really last year where they started hashing it out. And they said, hey, for bulk email senders, if they don't have correctly configured DMARC, we're going to start taking action, forcing them to do it. Well, enter the financial effect of it. They started out by unconfigured DMARC records, putting those emails into spam. And they didn't just say, hey, we're going to turn it on all in one day. No, they started ratcheting it up 10% at a time, 25% at a time. And that's an IT provider's worst nightmare because now you have emails that are inconsistently delivered, inconsistently rejected, and you're trying to figure out what's going on. Well, enter my story. There was a small business I work with, and their web designer about went insane. For a week, he was trying to figure out why the contact form submissions of people who wanted a quote for this business weren't getting to the business email. And so the form submission would come to the website, would be sent to the business email, and it was supposed to land in their, intake box where they would then schedule these follow-on quotes. And they had been missing them for over a month. They were getting an average of, 6 to 7 requests for quotes a week. And typically when that happens, they get about a 50% conversion rate. And obviously, this was a company, I don't want to go into too much details, but, their average job size was, $8,000 to $10,000. And so think about the income lost on the quotes they didn't follow up on. Well, I looked into it. And it was DMARC was not configured. And even though they weren't a bulk sender, those rules were still being applied. And so DMARC lost them several $1,000s.
Wow, that's incredible. And it really does bring to the forefront the monetary penalty for not using correctly configured DMARC.
Correct.
So obviously you found a tool to help you and your clients, you on the management side, and obviously for your clients, it helps to make sure their DMARC is configured properly. So what is that tool, and what was kind of the process that you went through to decide on picking that tool?
So it was EasyDMARC. And when I was initially researching DMARC configuration and misconfiguration, I came across some of their YouTube documents about what DMARC was. That really helped inform me. But what was also cool is they have this domain scanner on their website where you can just put in an email domain and they'll tell you whether the DMARC records are correct, whether the SPF or the DKIM is not configured correctly. And so the fact that they were so helpful from that perspective made me look and evaluate the product. And I looked at, I don't remember the name, so I looked at 1 or 2 competitors. And what really made me settle on EasyDMARC is they're MSP friendly. I could essentially offer the service and resell it to the people that I work with, my small businesses. And what I mean by service is your job isn't done once you've correctly configured DMARC. At any time, a business could decide to bring on a marketing agency, or they could decide to modify their email services. Well, part of DMARC is that SPF record, where you're saying who the authorized senders are, and that DKIM key, where you're authenticating the senders. And so once you've locked down that DMARC policy and you've said, hey, mail servers, when you get my mails, reject them if they're not really from me. Well, then you add in a marketing tool and you haven't correctly configured that. Now your marketing emails aren't going through. And so EasyDMARC allows me to do ongoing monitoring. And I can see if new services pop up that are trying to send emails as my partners. Well, what gets really fun is when they didn't add a new service. And now I can see these are spoofing attacks that have been defeated by DMARC.
Yeah, and that's really important. I use EasyDMARC myself to manage our domains here at All Things MSP. And I love the fact that it's so easy to assess a domain and then manage it through their interface. And you're right about the MSP friendly part. And that extends to, I think, the entire team at EasyDMARC, by the way. They're just friendly people. But specifically, they do understand the MSP business. They've created a tool that works the way we need it to work. And so I really do appreciate that. And if you had one thing that you really had to say was your favorite thing about EasyDMARC, what would that be?
You can actually send a test email with it. So when I get done correctly configuring an email, I wait for the domain records to propagate, send a test email, and I can see that I have indeed fixed the misconfiguration issues. That saves me a lot of time. Before, I would have to manually parse through the headers and see what did the DKIM keys say, what did the DMARC keys say, and it's a really fast and easy thing that allows me to go do something else while I wait for that test email to go through and be evaluated.
And that, I imagine, saves you a lot of time. And
Correct.
in MSP world, time is money. And especially when you're trying to drive maximum value for minimum price for these smaller clients, that becomes critical to manage nerds.
Yep. And if I had to say secondary, my other favorite tool is the domain scanner, right? I've got unlimited usage as an MSP. Well, when I am looking at negotiating a contract with a small business, I put their domain in that email scanner so I can tell them up front, hey, your domain is misconfigured. That's an opportunity to talk to them about this service that I can provide as a part of their managed services package.
So you can almost use it as not just an onboarding or assessment tool, but also as a lead generation tool.
Correct.
Awesome. Well, Sharon, thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you for EasyDMARC for, providing their sponsorship to All Things MSP. If you're not using a DMARC provider, please consider doing so, because it is critically important to your clients that email gets delivered. I mean, Sharon talked about it today. $8,000 to $10,000 per incident or per quote in her story's case. So make sure you do it. Check out EasyDMARC. You can go to atmsp.link/EasyDMARC. Have a great day.
Thank you.